Today we're here with Drew, who's the VP of Brand at SentinelOne. How's it going, Drew?
Good. How's it going?
Hey, Drew.
Pretty good. Thanks for joining us today. So, Drew, you're the VP of Brand at SentinelOne. What does that mean, and what do you do? And could you tell us a bit about what's interesting about your company?
Yeah. So, VP of Brand, I think, is sort of a weird title, something that you don't see that often. But basically in marketing, the same way that you have a owner for product marketing or an owner for demand gen or an owner for comms, and they have multiple initiatives in that field. It's the same for me and my team. We focus on building, improving upon, and elevating the SentinelOne brand in many different aspects. That's from telling the brand story to ensuring its quality across the board. So, the way I sum it up, in a room full of people that are working on a project, I'm the person going constantly looking on the outside saying, is this good for the brand? Rather than us kind of like focusing inside, I'm looking outside, and my team is as well. So, essentially I lead a team of talented people across the board, or across the world rather. We work on multiple projects, all aimed at up-leveling the SentinelOne brand. That can take many different forms, from traditional brands or traditional advertising and websites and social, but we also touch on some sort of odd things that I would say, like product hierarchy, product structure, executive presenting, some partnerships. Actually, one of my favorite projects ever has been with SentinelOne, and that was our partnership with the Aston Martin Formula One team. I think that they have the longest name ever. It's Aston Martin Formula One Cognizant Aramco Formula One team. So it's a mouthful.
Really rolls off the tongue, right?
I know, right? All right. They just keep on adding sponsors. But, that was like a dream come true. We had this sort of convergence of brand and cybersecurity and Formula One. I'm a very, very huge Formula One fan. So we've had a good year so far with Fernando Alonso. We're in second place. And it's been quite a year. We're only 3 races in. I don't want to talk about Formula One. I can dive into that. That'll be the whole podcast. But essentially, what's fascinating about SentinelOne, in my opinion, is that we are constantly evolving. We're constantly adapting. We're constantly innovating to protect our customers, to change with the cybersecurity landscape.
How did you get into the world of brand and get excited about working on this kind of thing every day?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends. Like, how far I can go? Like way back, or I can,
let's bring it back to childhood. What
okay.
you're putting on the fridge.
Okay. So yeah, I had a very, was always creatively minded, creatively focused. My family, or part of my family, is from Hollywood, and I grew up in the LA area. So we constantly was, a child of the 80s, constantly getting music thrown my way, movies, artwork, sort of, a lot of culture thrown my way growing up. And so, as you look at growing up in the 80s and the 90s, we kind of had the best of it all, in my opinion. We had, movies, toys, music, the birth of the internet. We had everything. So that really was very formative into what I'm doing right now. But then also, when I was around, I think it was 10, I had a very formative experience. I was going into a little bit of storytelling right now, but I was at my grandma's for Christmas, right? It was Christmas Day. And I think it was around 10 years old, 10 or 11, somewhere around there. And we just finished up Christmas, and my cousin walks in, and she just throws a present down on my lap, and I'm going, "Oh, hey, what's up? How's it going?" And I open it up, and it's a CD for the band Tool, which I'm like, "How did you know? Like, how did you know?" Like, right? And she's like, "Oh, that's my boyfriend. This is like my boyfriend's in that band." And I kind of look up at him, and I'm going, like, what is happening right now? Like, what's going on, right?
Was it Maynard?
No, it was Adam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, like Adam Jones, he's the guitar player for Tool. He also leads all their visual design, all their videos, their like everything, like the look that and somewhat the sound of Tool is pretty much all on him. So she goes, "Turn it around." She goes, and the back of that cover, this is the Undertow cover, is a pig with a whole bunch of forks around him, and on the side it has the name of the album, Undertow. Yeah. Kind of like carved into or shaved into the pig. And she goes, "That's my pig." And I'm just like going, what is happening right now? Right. And I open it up. I'm like, this is crazy. I open it up. The artwork is just wild. It's very disturbing. And the juxtaposition between like that and this family Christmas was just so jarring. And so I sat down with Adam, and he's telling me about this whole process of how they came up with the concept. And, I'm 10. Like, I don't think that this is a normal thing for a 10-year-old, but I'm loving it, And so we eat dessert, we finish up the night, and then around 11 o'clock, he goes, "Do you want to go to the studio? We're filming a video." And I loved the video that they did before. This is right when they came out with, this is going to kill me. I can't remember the name of their first video, but essentially we go back. I look at my dad. I'm like, "Can I please go?" And he's like, yeah, go away. So we go to North Hollywood in some shady, this is Christmas night, into some shady studio. We essentially get there at like what's close to midnight, right? And they're still filming this video, and it is stop motion. I'm like just kind of being plunged into this world of creativity, and they're showing me concept drawings. I'm going around looking at, picking up different like little baby heads with mechanical like eyes that you can move. There's all sorts of like vulgar artwork around, and I'm just like, I'm completely in it. So long story short, that was extremely formative to what I wanted to do. And I took that, and I'm like, going into, I guess, high school and college, I knew exactly right off the bat what I wanted to do. And so that has always shifted and changed. I went from getting into design and getting into, from there, went into kind of switched into editing and into film editing. And then came across, going into followed my passion for coding and development. And then, went from agency to agency, lived that life, was not happy. I would go and work, and then I would come back at night, and I would work for about, at home for about 4 hours, 5 hours, and I did that for a long time. And then about, I can't remember the year, but somewhere in like the mid 2000s, I decided to go off on my own And that really taught me a lot about sales, about human psychology, a lot about how to build a project at multiple levels that really widened my scope of what it meant to be creative on different fields, right? And so I was really into cybersecurity on the side, and then a colleague or friend reached out to me and wanted to work on a couple of projects for their startup, and eventually, asked me if I wanted to join. And it was that was a company called Silence, and they sort of introduced AI into the cybersecurity realm, and they were kind of a game changer. So it's took that, and then eventually came to SentinelOne, and that was about I think my first that was about 10 years ago. Started getting into cybersecurity, and it's been a wild ride, to say the least.
It's wild when you're mentioning. I'd forgotten about that album image, or the imagery in that Tool album, and
Yeah,
I was like, okay, you probably remember the images I was talking about, or that I'm thinking of. But there, some of those images I was just reading, some of those were so controversial that like Kmart and Walmart wouldn't stock them.
yes,
So they
yeah,
put out a version that was just a big barcode on a white background.
yeah,
And they
exactly.
had
Wow.
a note in there. It's so funny. It's like
Good memory.
it
Wow.
can't.
Yeah, wow.
Oh, I'm reading from Wikipedia. It's like a memory enhancer. They had this note
Right, me too.
that I got. It goes, it came to our attention recently that many stores across our fine and open-minded nation would not stock Undertow because of our explicit artwork. Although we loathe being censored, and then crossed out, we want your money. We still want you to hear our music, so we took it out. However, it is available to you at no extra cost. Fill out the forms, stick it in an envelope, mail it in, and we'll send you the original artwork.
That's so good.
That's so funny. Just to there's censored, so they just throw a barcode on the front of it.
The funny thing is that it wasn't like the cover was controversial. It was when you opened up the liner notes, and it was just like, it was like a naked sumo wrestler with another naked person on top of it, like weird stuff. And Christmas, I'm like eating it up. I'm going like, oh, this is crazy. My dad's just going, what are you doing? Like, to my whole rest of my family. He's like, what are you doing to my son?
Yeah.
But I guess it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think that's our first response that we've received that started with a Tool video. So,
happy to be the first, one of many,
really.
Hopefully.
That's super cool. So kind of just to build off of that awesome answer, would you say that you kind of knew going back to your childhood when you were around 10 that you wanted to do something in creative for sure? Or was it more of just like a thing that you really loved doing, and then kind of as you got older, it became like this aha moment where you're like, I could actually make money doing this? Was there some more to it than that?
No, I think I honestly, I knew that I wouldn't say that there was like an aha moment. I would say that from my perspective, I just constantly refined and constantly worked through it. Like, I will always say, like, there's people that are way smarter than I am, far more talented than I am, but I will always kind of work through it because that's what I've always done. Like, I remember when I was like at that same age, I was, coming up with comic book characters or writing scripts or, filming commercials, like weird stuff like that. And so, yeah, that sounds very nerdy as like a kid coming up with commercials, but,
Nice,
yeah,
cool.
Right. Essentially, I would say that, thank you. I would say that, I just constantly refined and grinded and worked through it, and like just essentially just have not stopped to just developing, right? Just constantly developing. And because essentially, I guess maybe it's from a past love or something, like something that really hooked me in my childhood. But I would say that it's just been throughout, like, decades now, just constantly hammering and refining. And, I'm not good at this. Okay, let's hone in on that. Let's grind that out. And, I like to jump around a lot. So I like to, like I said, go from coding to film editing to branding to all sorts of things. So I think that really gave me, the outcome of all of that really led me to where I am right now, as far as like, okay, taking a holistic view, like you've kind of have a good idea of all these little parts. And you can kind of put those together. And that's essentially what, building a brand is.
That's great. So the name of this podcast is Best Story Wins. And we know that in the world of brand building and marketing, the term storytelling gets used quite a bit. Sometimes it gets misused, and you could also make the argument that it is a term that's overused. How would you explain what storytelling is and what it isn't in the context of building brands and marketing?
Yeah, so I would define storytelling as just simply connection, or if I have to sum it up to one word, I would say connection. I think that's the purpose of storytelling, to connect with other humans, other people, when you're sitting by the campfire telling a story, or you're watching a movie, or you're reading a book to your daughter. There's always some form of connection, whether that's the storyteller or the observer or the listener, right? To me, it's all about human connection. And in business, I think that the important part is connecting with your audience, finding out their wants, their needs, their desires, and creating something that connects with them. And it's not about what you want to say. It's about what they want to hear, what they want to feel. And if you can take that and you can pair it with your brand's value, your brand's positioning, your brand's differentiation, that's where the magic happens. And that's where brand storytelling can be very, very effective. What I think it's not, I think it's not a show of greatness or a show of like excellence. And I think that's what, not always, I think it's shifting, but that's what a lot of companies gravitate towards. Like we are this, look at us. And if they shifted into a direction to where they were connecting with who they're selling to, who their users are, I think that their brand would be much, much stronger.
That's good.
Yeah, that's a great point. I really I feel like I've heard this for, years and years, just that, to make the customer the hero of your journey, or the hero of the journey. And it's so much easier said than done, because you get in and it's like, it's your website. So you want to talk about yourself and what you do and make it clear what you do. But it's really such a powerful thing, like as you're going through writing out a story or any piece of messaging, to keep that in mind and just go like, how do we actually get somebody to see what's in it for them and how they're a part of this thing? How do you do that at SentinelOne? Like what seems to really, what is the brand story, and what really resonates with your customers?
Yeah, I think just backing up a little bit, I think that to bounce off of your comment there, that takes a lot of time, and it takes like the connection takes a lot of just that. It takes like a lot of getting out there and connecting with customers, connecting with your user type, and that's something that when I first got into the cybersecurity realm, like I completely did not understand at all. Like I was not connected whatsoever with them. And that's something where, at times you can glean information from others in your organization, but for the most part, it takes like direct connection to really be able to tell that story. So just something that you said, kind of stood out to me. But to your question, when looking, I guess, to tell the SentinelOne story, what we know is that cybersecurity is constantly changing. Threats are becoming more advanced and they're growing at an exponential rate. And the amount of people to deal with the volume is not growing at that same rate. And for decades, the answer in cybersecurity has been to build more products and throw more people at the problem. And, we believe that humans alone are not capable of dealing with this level of threats. And, in the future, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And you need a new perspective. So what makes our technology different is that we protect, detect, and respond to cyber threats without relying solely on human interaction. Where our competitors are human powered, we are using autonomous technology to prevent cyber attacks for businesses at any scale. So, I think when you're building a brand story, you have to look at your company objectively and you have to focus in on what makes you different. What do you bring that's different into the world, right? And so that's where it took us a long time to get there and to build that story, but that's eventually where we landed, is our autonomous technology.
Would you say that's like kind of the secret ingredient, or does the fact that it's autonomous do something like, does it lead to like an aha moment for people or give them an extra sense of like, this is always on for us? Or what, is that the secret ingredient, or what would you say is the secret ingredient of the story?
Yeah, I would definitely say that it is, like that's where you see the delineation between us and them, right? And so when you look at, like, it's not that people are bad and we don't want people, but to deal with this new problem, to deal with this scale, you cannot have a human-centered approach. You need the approach of almost augmenting the machine and the person to solve this. So yes, to answer your question, I would say that that's definitely the secret. I think, was it the secret sauce? Is that what the term that you used?
Yeah, like sometimes there's this moment when you're looking at a product, or even when you first use a product, where it's just like, oh, I get it. Or there's just this like aha moment.
Yeah.
Do you notice that happening in like a consistent way? Like, this is the moment when people just like, it just clicks and people get it.
Yeah, it's a little bit different in cybersecurity because it's not necessarily like it's not necessarily like there's that, you pick up your phone and you're like, oh, this is cool, this is different. You like get into the experience. It's almost essentially over time. I think that the aha moment is that the traction that we've seen in the market, where we've come from and how much we've grown. So like we've had that aha moment, but the scale of time is much different. It's not like direct. It's not immediate. We've like evolved and grown throughout over the years, and set forth with this I guess philosophy, or this approach. And then we've seen that growth and that approach throughout the years.
Right. Okay. So shifting gears a little bit, I'm curious what how just the consumer awareness in general and interest in AI, seems like 50 times a day or something, somebody talks about ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And Mid-Journey is, increasingly, I think, like the outputs from that are almost indistinguishable from human made
Mhm.
photography, especially for people who are quite skilled at it. How's that changing how you think about content creation and ideation?
Yeah, I think that you know, I've messed around pretty extensively with Mid Journey. Still not that great at it, but I think that I think for all of us, it's a massive learning experiment, and also Chat GPT as well. I think that as I look for, I guess, the immediate future, what I think that it will do for marketers and brand builders and creatives is really open us up and get us there quicker to certain projects. So if you look at, like, if I'm concepting, let's just say I'm concepting a new commercial, right? If I'm going to an agency and I'm like, okay, explaining what I want or what the vision is, putting mood boards together, going over multiple meetings, I can essentially spend that same time, maybe cut that time in half and go like, okay, I did some work. Here's some like ideation. Here's the vision of roughly what we want to get to. So I think that what it does is it really just expands what we can do as marketers. And I personally am excited. I know that a lot of people are maybe a little terrified of AI, and you've seen Elon and lots of others calling for the pause on AI. And while I think that, like, I understand that why they do that, I also just maybe taking a more optimistic mindset in AI, and especially for building brands. If we can harness it in the right way, I think that it will allow us to do so much more and really push what we can do as marketers.
That response really jives with a lot of what we've heard from other folks that are in similar types of roles, like people that have actually built a career making and creating and actually building businesses and making things happen. And I think a lot of the fear comes from people that aren't really in it day in, day out, and they don't
Mhm.
see the distinction between these tools as replacing them and these tools that could make them better at what they already do. And so
Yeah.
I think a lot of the fear is misplaced. I don't know if that's the right way to look at it. I'm just starting to see really a pattern with the people I'm talking to. And
It's a
I just thought
useful
that's,
way to make ourselves feel better for the next 6 months or so.
Yeah. Right.
yeah, it's good fodder for our delusions of grandeur, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's
It's
like there will always be necessary, right? And it's
yeah.
interesting what you said about freeing us up too. Like I I mean, there's a big picture version of that that's kind of strange to ponder, but I think it's like, and even just on a project level, I like what you said about it making it like faster to get to actually like
Mm.
executing on something. And that's like a kind of a cool, I think, tip to keep in mind there too, that like it's like it's overwhelming, right? The flood of new tools and new
Mm.
capabilities coming out. But I think like just as much as ever in like marketing, at some point you have to like actually choose something and focus on it and get it done, or like activate the right people to get it done. You can't be
Yeah.
like pushing a million snails at once, So it's kind of
Yeah.
interesting to think about using these to like facilitate actually like more rapid execution of individual projects as well.
Yeah, and I think that those that it's just kind of, and maybe this is just the way that I see the world and where I've come from, and why I gravitate towards cybersecurity is that, like, I'm constantly in the world of, like, things are evolving. Like, every couple months we have to change, we have to move forward, and, like, that's sort of the cadence that I'm in. So when this came around, is like, okay, like, I'm used to embracing things like that. And I think that the interesting part is that it will be, in the future, it will be less the hand that's doing the thing, where it's less like you moving and it's more interacting, the human computer interaction, and the person that can really create is the person that can understand the computer, and the computer can understand them. And then they, in a way, like it kind of opens things up creatively. Because, I went on Mid-Journey for the first time. I'm opening up. I went to ChatGPT and I'm like, okay, how do I express what I want?
Yeah.
Okay, well, now that really opens up things and creates a whole new problem and a whole new mindset that we're not used to. So I think that once we become a lot more familiar with this world, it's so fast. We're moving where things are changing, evolving so quickly. It seems like every week something new is coming out where you're just going, oh, well, now they have apps connected. Now people are creating their own apps they're connecting. It's just moving so fast. But once we kind of get used to it and we learn, I think that we're, from a marketing perspective, maybe not the greater world, like maybe we'll be really good at marketing, but the world will be crumbling. Who knows? But I think from a marketing perspective, I'm really excited for what this will bring.
Yeah.
The debates on it are pretty amazing to watch. I mean, I can totally empathize with someone who has like painstakingly carved out an original, unique style over like 20 years, and then someone else can just like without attribution, like rip it off.
Yeah.
Like sometimes the argument is like, well, anyway, that's how it always goes. Everyone can copy anyone, but like fewer people actually can or could before, or would take the time to,
Yeah.
like actually like replicate somebody's painting style or something. But I think those like the debates and conversation around that are interesting. I think I don't know. I try to take like a balanced view on it, but I do think it's funny when people frame it just as like, tech, embracing tech versus being a Luddite. Like the best one I heard, somebody was like arguing against AI, and this person just like, it's like a mic drop kind of was just like, go burn a loom.
That's so good.
I love that. Love that.
Like that's a pretty original burn right there, I think. But anyways,
I mean,
yeah.
The crazy part is that also with ChatGPT being the most adopted product of all time, I believe that's the stat. I think it's the fastest. Yeah. There's still a considerable amount of people out there, obviously, that don't know it, and it hasn't really hit that mass scale. I mean, it has been mass, but it's not like not in the same scale as like a smartphone where every single person has one and has interacted with it. And once that happens, I think that's when I think it becomes a little bit scarier. And the funny thing, this is top of mind. I think it was last Friday. I was in LA, and it was someone turned next to me, and they're like, "Oh, it's Arnold," and I just thought it was like their friend, and it was Arnold Schwarzenegger standing right next to me. And I'm like, I go back home and watch Terminator 2 and then jump into Mid-Journey and ChatGPT later that afternoon. So it's like, at least from my perspective, I'm pretty tied into just like, it seems everything in the ether is just AI all the time. And it's a pretty wild ride we're going on.
Now, speaking of Arnold, have you heard about his podcast?
I have not. No.
Okay.
Okay.
So obviously he was a Terminator, and I got the sense that that's what you were referencing.
Yeah.
But he also recently released a new podcast that's really oriented around fitness and, from what I understand, like encouraging people to like work out, and it's meant to be like very motivational, right? And the podcast has actually been created using like thousands of hours of his voice. Okay. And basically someone came up with the content, I think under his supervision, and then they feed it through this machine that then delivers it in his voice. So he's not actually recording the podcast himself. So it's pretty wild.
That's terrifying.
I know. Go down the rabbit hole on that one. And I mean, to just like further build on that a bit and to touch on something you mentioned a minute ago, there's already talks of like the post app world and what that means for all of us, right? Like, that's, I think, for another show, but it's this idea that like, okay, apps, like self-contained apps, like
Yeah.
that's only going to be a thing for another couple of years before like everything is just defined by its connection to, or its lack thereof to Chat GPT and other forms of AI. I think that's kind of what you're talking about in terms of
Yeah.
like once we get to the smartphone levels of adoption.
Mm-hmm.
A little scary, but and I kind of view myself ironically as more of a Luddite when it comes to like emergent technologies, but it certainly feels like it's a moment right now where you kind of have to figure out like, okay, I can't just like put my head in the sand, like, but what does it mean for me personally or us as a business to sign
Sometimes
up here?
sometimes it's like you're like you think of like the text prompt, text to image, text to video, like you're talking about Arnold showing up and then like you going back to Chat GPT and Midjourney and playing around with that.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just funny to think we're not like that far away from being in, with like immersive experiences and world building, and like Roblox has now, some AI tools where you can like use text prompts to generate the world, the virtual world or experience that you want to make. It's like, it's funny to think that you could be so immersed in a world like that you could actually prompt Arnold into showing up next to you and have it be indistinguishable,
right,
from whatever reality is.
Well, I know like
6 months from now you could do that,
right? I know that there's a lot. We've been talking about AI from like storytelling and how we kind of build brands, but I'm inquisitive to Joss and Jason, how have you and your teams embraced it, and how that has changed what you do in your business.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. I think it's been most useful to me. We have a kind of sub agency that we're creating that's focused on a lot of these immersive experiences and Web3 type businesses. And it's interesting, like looking at the messaging around that. And, there's like, we can get it so far ourselves. But there's sometimes where it's like, okay, we're still in a little bit of this marketing speak, like there's always this like, it's valuable, but there's like this like gravity towards making things simpler and simpler so that they're clear to people. But then at some point, it's like you distill so far that it can sound generic. So I've found, GPT-4 is really helpful for just like, even just kind of cracking my own brain out of that mold. But I mean, I'm probably more likely to like write something really unusual and weird that then gets reined in, to be clear. But so it's actually maybe more helpful for me in taking like kind of a wild idea, but then getting a little more initial structure for then giving that to like a copywriter on our team or producer on our team to say like, okay, like here's the underlying thinking that I'm putting into GPT-4. Here's like, sometimes I'll be like, write this value proposition as if Bob Dylan, Kurt Vonnegut, and Dennis Johnson, one of my other favorite authors, like wrote it, and it'll just be like batshit crazy stuff. But then it's like, okay, there's a little nugget there I can pull out that's like a seed of a concept for a different way of saying it. So I feel like it's like, there's always, I think it's like really dangerous territory to just like, I don't think we should be thinking about like shipping things off verbatim, like as an output without any additional context or thinking. We actually had a client who hired us recently who had told us that their last agency was actually kind of like proud of themselves for saying like everything in this deck was made in GPT, and they were like, I get where they were coming from, saying like, look how advanced we are. We're using AI to do this work for us, but I think there's still something in that, at least for us as like a service business. It's like, you definitely want to get beyond what you could just type in and prompt yourself. But I do like I do agree with and kind of the angle of like the career path or whatever of a prompt engineer is
Mhm.
pretty interesting, because once you've like really hammered on these tools, you start learning more advanced ways to like actually maybe get a unique output or something that I think about this a lot. Like, at what point is it like a true collaboration? You're not just like typing something in that's like quote unquote stealing from other people, but like, at a certain point, you put enough of your own original thinking and ideas into like what you're combining and how you're mashing things up. And then, like in Midjourney, taking your outputs and then mashing those up together with your own prompts. Like, it's kind of almost like a philosophical question, like at
Right.
what point could you actually say that something there is original or your
It's
own actual
yours.
creation? Yeah. Or your
Yeah.
collaboration with the machine. But yeah, to your original question, I think it's also just like an interesting opportunity to think about how we can help companies thoughtfully integrate this into their own marketing systems. And like a practical idea that I think is really interesting is just like, that position you're in sometimes where it's like, oh, we need a blog post graphic and everyone on the design team slammed. So then you have to like delay a blog post for 5 days or something. Just being in a position where you could be like, even in the brand guidelines, like use this prompt and whatever comes out of that can be considered on brand. But you'd have to put some work in to actually get to like the environment where
Yeah.
I see you
I,
like grimacing a little.
I mean, well, it brings up a point, which, like you talked about, Kurt Vonnegut and kind of like, write it in the style of Kurt Vonnegut or, JD Salinger or whoever, right? Like, these are works that are out there that we can collectively pull from. But like, when I think it becomes really interesting is when we can upload our own, whether it's like our own brand, our own thinking, and we can,
Yeah.
have it output things that are us, right? Or, you're like, Jason, you're like, give me an answer that to this question in the voice and tone of Drew Hoffman, and it would be able to talk or write exactly like me. That to me is when things become interesting and very terrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Josh would probably love if I could do like answer this as if I have already thought about it out loud for 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's funny. Where I go with that question, Drew, is just to kind of build off of something Jay was touching on. I think we're gonna find ourselves in an era where some of the best creative ever has been created, and I don't necessarily think it's going to be because AI is going to help them. I think that is going to be a very real thing, and I think that AI is going to help us make great things. But I think that like a marketing team, a brand and marketing team at a brand or at an agency, like they're having to do everything, right? Like they're figuring out how to brand the podcast, how to actually like, make all the images for each episode look good. They're doing branded videos. They're doing sales enablement content. They're doing like every single thing that powers every single touch point.
Yeah.
But if you can get to the point where like 80% of that stuff is done by AI or through AI assist, you can figure out, okay, what are the real like super important things that we really need like human ingenuity and focus to make like best in class. And I think by just like having that brain space and that time and energy that they can pour into those things, we're going to see some like really complex content types, whether it's video or interactive experiences. I think we're going to just like, we're going to raise the bar quite a bit in those areas. And I think that that's really cool to think about. Unfortunately, I think we're also going to see, writers are going to be either left behind or they're going to be, the prompters. Curious to see what happens to designers. I think maybe that's going to play out a little bit differently, but it could be very similar. But yeah, that's just kind of where my head goes with it. And It'll be interesting to see. A lot of people I've heard just like via LinkedIn and Twitter are like touching on this idea that's kind of new, but it's essentially award shows are going to have like designations for like, was AI involved, or was it like almost like organic human creativity, right? And I just think that's so cool to think about. And obviously, it's all still new days for this stuff, but definitely some interesting things to think about.
Yeah, we're gonna have like the parental advisory on every single award submission, right? Like going back to the tool reference.
Yeah. Was this pig really shaved, or was it?
Yeah, there we go.
You'll have to submit like closed circuit surveillance footage of yourself, like actually manually creating something,
right?
Which you could also probably deep fake, and then that'll be the next controversy. That you're like using AI to generate your surveillance footage of yourself manually creating something.
Right. Yeah, I think that when it comes to when you go back, you're talking about from a writing perspective, that's one where I go, that's something where the creative spirit will always be there. Like you'll always need that. Like to me, I don't think, from my experience, I don't think that ChatGPT, and maybe it will get there, but I feel like there's something about writing creatively that just takes human power, like to get that idea. It's so very like nuanced, and maybe we'll get there. But from like a designer's perspective, I think that it will push them. I think that it will push them into widening their skills, into not only the visual communication, but also the written, the verbal, the spoken. I think that'll kind of like take a designer out of a certain mindset, and really, I think it'll really impact designers heavily.
Yeah, it's like I mean, when you think about what it's doing, it's drawing from all of the world's writing and creations before, and kind of like blending them together or kind of curating the answer. But you think about like any artist or musician, they could draw from all of those things themselves, but there's like, unless you're like, at least if you're wanting to be an original creator, which I think a lot of artists at least have that like impulse. It's like, I don't know. I think of Bob Dylan a lot when I think of this, because like he's like reinvented himself so many times, and in a lot of cases like drawn heavily from inspiration from like a previous era, like blues and so forth. But like he like invents these characters and personas of himself, through like each decade or phase he's been in, and it's like he just like created his own original, like he like synthesized some of those things, and like drew influence from them, but then like made it his own thing, So I think that's kind of what you're getting at, or it's cool. I like that perspective that it like pushes designers or pushes people to like, not just like, it's like, yeah, if what you currently can do can now be easily done or like prompted by anyone, like what do? You kind of have to reinvent yourself.
Yeah, I think that will become the name of the game. I think that pretty soon here we're going to be able to determine that's Midjourney, that's ChatGPT, that's Stable Diffusion. Like we can be able to see it, and you already can. Like I can tell right off the bat when something is written by ChatGPT. I can tell for the most part, and I can tell when something's a Midjourney. So I think to your point, it's exactly that. You're going to have to take that creative thought, or really focus on the creativity and less like the output. Like in a weird way, the output will be the easy part. It'll be more based on like, what's the nugget, what's the creative driving force behind this, and we're going to be, I think we're going to be forced to push boundaries into new places and really expand upon what's readily available. Because right now you can make something in Photoshop, you can make something in in Cinema 4D. You can make something, you can write something, right? And now it's kind of like all of those tools that we use, in a way, not completely, but all of those tools are kind of like out the window because this one tool has, or these multiple tools have kind of like taken those places. So to me, it's like, okay, well, where do you go from there? And the only place is like to really focus on what is the idea, what is the creative driving force behind that. And that's, to your point, that's what Bob Dylan did, is like he took all these different influences and he built upon it and made it his own to create and spawn a new idea. So
6 months ago, like most of your average people weren't thinking about AI, like, right? No one was talking about it. You all have been developing this product for years and have been leveraging the power of AI for years. There's other people that are similar, or other companies that are similar in that sense as well. And so in a way, the companies that were thinking about AI 5-10 years ago are really well positioned for this current kind of zeitgeist, right, moment that we're in, where everyone's thinking about AI, thinking about what it means for themselves, what it means for their business. So I'm just curious, like, with that shift and with all this attention on artificial intelligence, does the SentinelOne brand change at all to kind of account for that? And if so, like, what does that mean for maybe how you're talking about yourselves and how you're marketing to people? And totally fine if like you're just not, like, it's totally fine if like you guys were just like, we've been doing this for years, like no need to change anything.
yeah, I think that it is a little too early to tell. Like we kind of forget, being in this world, that it's 6 months ago. Like to your point, 6 months ago we're not here now. So to me, for the foreseeable future, it's not going to change much. But we have also, being in this world of AI for so long, we are positioned a lot better from just a brand to, like you said, to be in this current zeitgeist. And AI tools, or I guess natural language models, have been, are starting to be introduced into the cybersecurity realm, but we haven't seen anything that is quite, mind blowing as ChatGPT. So to answer your question, I wouldn't say that we are changing much, but we're, like every other cybersecurity company that exists right now, we're definitely testing the waters. We're very focused on innovation, constantly evolving. So that's sort of our in our DNA. So, this kind of brings up a new opportunity for us, a new way at looking at cybersecurity, and we're definitely going to take that chance. So,
okay, so some people cut costs during a recession, economic downturn. Other people advocate for that being a good time to double down and invest, kind of the builders build through the winter mindset. How do you think specifically for brand and marketing people, like what do you think the current market conditions mean?
Yeah, well, I think that we're not currently in the market. I don't think that we're currently, it's up for debate whether we are, in a recession or not. I don't think that from a market perspective, we've really gotten that trigger to where it's like, we are in a recession, you need to hunker down. So I think what a lot of companies, a lot of marketers are doing are kind of like waiting. They're maybe, holding off on a lot of initiatives, still, keeping some of the most important initiatives at the top, but maybe holding out and holding back a little bit and showing a little bit of restraint. I also think that, in these current market conditions, it forces brands, marketers, brand builders, whoever, to be much more precise with what they're putting out there, much more precise with the dollars that they're doing. And also, hopefully, AI coming onto the scene will help the situation. I think that it's perfect timing in a way to where you have harder economic conditions, but you also have a tool that frees people up and allows people to do more and be more effective at their jobs. So I think that you'll see, in a way, a lot of evolution and a lot of adaptation. And I think that we're heading into, in a weird way, I mean, maybe, like I said, I'm a little bit more optimistic, but in a weird way, hopefully we can come out of this. We'll have, this holy trinity of AI where we have writing tools, we have video tools, and we have visual and design tools, to where we'll completely be, focused just on the idea.
That's good. Drew, well, thanks for joining us today. It was great connecting. And if people want to learn more about you and follow you online, where's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, I try to stay off of social media, but I still am on Instagram. That's the only one that I really am. So it's just Drew Hoffman. You can find me there. You can also take a look at SentinelOne at sentinelone.com. Yeah, and that's about it.
Awesome. Thank
Thanks,
you so
Drew.
much.
Column 5's Best Story Wins is for marketing and branding professionals looking to unlock their growth potential. Each episode features a conversation with industry leaders about how they win the hearts and minds of their customers and build world-class brands. You'll learn about their success stories and their failures, as well as ideas for how to take your own marketing efforts to the next level. Welcome to Best Story Wins.